On today's Locked On Bucks, we once again take a look back at the end of the playoffs and the end of the regular season as Frank Madden joins us to weigh in on an epic collapse in Game 5 and where the Bucks go from here. We dig into it coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I am Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. And today, Frank Madden, as we thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We had more feedback on this than probably anything the last couple weeks, other than doom for the Bucks collapse and what it means for Giannis. But the people had to get Frank Madden's thoughts on a lot of things. Game 5, the close to the series, the close to the season, an interesting off season, which I feel like we've said for 3 straight years now for this Bucks team. And so we deliver. So Frank, you haven't had a chance to share your thoughts on any of that, have you?
No, I was on a plane watching Game 5 on my iPhone. I got the streaming to work, and I watched the Game 5 meltdown while I was flying to Philadelphia for work. And yeah, it was like, honestly, like as it was like happening, I was just like sitting there thinking like, this is, they're really gonna lose this game. Like that's just what's happening here. So I mean, I wasn't like, throwing things on the airplane or,
causing the scene.
I wasn't like, there wasn't like, like an air marshal having to intervene or anything like that. It was just like, sure, why not? Right. After the Dame thing, like might as well just absolutely just, die a very public death here in the worst way possible. So, and then the nice thing was I got in kind of late into Philadelphia. Unfortunately, a coworker of mine had gotten in around the same time, and then we drove and talked about TV shows and not about sports at all. So I was just sort of like in a different zone. Although we were talking about the TV show The Leftovers, which I feel is like an appropriately like depressing TV show to talk about. I feel like we're the leftovers of Bucks fandom on some level here, but yeah, so that was kind of my end of the season, and then I kept kind of meaning to find time for us to do this, and then to the point, Justin, where we were going to record on Thursday, and I literally fell asleep while putting my 7-year-old to bed, and totally blew you off. So my apologies for that, but it's Sunday night. And I don't know. I've actually been watching a fair amount of playoffs, you guys. It's been entertaining. Half of it's like me kind of hate watching. Half of it's me kind of having like some genuine interest in some of the teams. Like I'd like to see the Wolves do well. I'm rooting for the Thunder over the Nuggets out of kind of, Giannis Jokic rivalry reasons. Giannis coming up looking great with Shea and Jokic both kind of not looking so hot these last couple of games
for the whole losing in the first round.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying it's because I'm not saying it's because of what Giannis did so much. Well, although he did obviously his part, but and then hoping the Knicks can beat the Celtics, considering they're my least favorite team, and I was also hoping the Cavs could at least defeat the Pacers. Although I don't know, it's like on some level, like the Pacers looking good, like I guess makes you feel a little bit better about the Bucks, but I don't know. I don't want the Pacers to do well. I wish nothing but bad things for them. So
we were talking about it just before we started recording, and I've said for 2 weeks now, I think the Pacers are going to win the East. Yeah. And said before the playoffs that wasn't the team I wanted to play. I would much rather take my chances with the Knicks. It's annoying that they have basically sunned you 2 years in a row.
How much of this do you think they own like voodoo dolls for every Eastern Conference opponent? Like, do you
this
think
injury luck along the way?
Like, are they gonna like like turn Al Horford's bones into mush like before game one.
I think
of these
Kristaps
finals.
Porzingis and the Celtics are going to do that on their own.
They
Honestly,
gave him like tuberculosis or something, which
The fact that he had this back in March, and it's
well,
we don't know if it's the same thing now, but like he had the illness earlier on in the year. He was out for a while, and then now he got sick again during one of the games. Like, I don't know what's going on with Kristaps Porzingis right now, but like whatever that virus is,
kill some time, Camille. Just jump into Reddit and get in the rabbit hole of what this is that Kristaps Porzingis is dealing with. Because
I blame TJ McConnell. That's all I'm going to say.
But I mean, look, it's kind of similar to Miami and our hatred for the Heat in those years that they bounced the Bucks. You can't not have respect for the Pacers for the way that they play and how they've handily beat the Bucks and Rick Carlisle and the job that he's done, and even the way they assembled that roster. So that's my leaving that series. And I think to your point too, Frank, I've watched much more of this postseason than I did a year ago, where you were just like, you got to be kidding me. And I didn't watch much of the second round. I did pick it up in the conference finals and obviously the finals, but I've watched everything since the Bucks were eliminated. And I think that's also been a part of like being further removed from it and watching these teams and realizing like, yeah, this team isn't at that level.
Yeah, not yet. So that's the big question here while watching these playoffs that I keep coming back to. It's like, what can we take away from what we're seeing from the teams that are finding success, and how far away are the Bucks from trying to achieve said success? I mean, 3 straight years, first round exits. We talked a lot last season about how we just got to get out the first round and then see what happens. And here we are again, another year where it's a first round exit. We're seeing the Pacers make some noise. What they did to the Cavaliers in game 4 is criminal at this point. The way that
what the Cavaliers also did to themselves, because they just looked like they were not.
But they gave up. They forgot to play basketball at one point. It's like the Space Jam aliens that came down and took their powers in that second quarter of that game, and then just continued on about their way. But it's like when you're looking at what you're seeing in the playoff field so far, and look at what the Bucks have. Like, how much further do you think, Frank, like the Bucks need to get in order? Let's just start here. To be playing in the semifinals with a chance to get to the conference finals going forward.
Justin, you're going to might as well do the ad read because it's going to take a while.
Well, it is a pretty long answer.
I love the self-awareness.
And
after 9 years of doing this podcast, finally got to a little bit of self-awareness.
All right, we'll tease Frank's answer for the next segment, and also I'm just going to point this out too as we get everybody ready for that answer. The Bucks losing in the first round of the Pacers 2 years in a row now. They're 0-4 against the Pacers in the playoffs. They lost to the Pacers 2 years in a row in 99 and 2000 before reaching the conference finals. The Pacers lost in the conference finals in year 1 in 99, lost in the NBA finals in 2000, and they lost in the conference finals last year. So maybe we see history repeat itself once again. But how close are the Bucks? What do they need to do? Frank's answer on that we'll get to coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Time now to talk to you about our friends over at DoorDash. You know what time it is. The playoff season begins, and that means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. So anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. All you have to do to get this combo, place an order of $20 or more and use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 or more in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code WINGSTOP50. That is Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. All right. How far away are the Bucks, Frank? We won't leave the people waiting any longer.
What do they need?
I mean, Well, I mean, maybe put this in perspective. So I think the framing you guys have taken as far as, like how you enter the offseason and all that, like I'm pretty much aligned with you guys, right? It's like if you're John Horst, you go in assuming like we're going to try to pitch Giannis on a version of this team that he'll at least want to stick around for. I think you're partially like appealing to him on the merits of, surrounding him with guys that, I think showed some upside and flashes this year, right? Obviously, trying to bring back Gary Trent. I think trying to bring back KPJ, given you have no, all-star point guard that you're paying $50 million going into next season, I think you need to try to bring back both KPJ and Ryan Rollins, who obviously you have restricted free agents rights on the ladder. So I think you're kind of like, trying to bring back, obviously, largely a version of what you have, hoping that some of those young guys can pop. Can you make much improvement otherwise on the margin? Like, again, depending on what happens with Brooke and Bobby, like, maybe you could use like your biannual exception or something like that. But like, you're really, again, like to reiterate to people, it's not like you can like use those salary slots for something else, really. It's just basically flexibility to use like the full non-taxpayer mid-level and probably stay under the tax, because let's be honest, like this is the obvious time, given kind of when you look at the roster and how much the cap is going up, this is an obvious year to actually try to stay under the tax and start to try resetting the repeater tax that you've just been like blasting through these last few years. So I think I think the best case scenario for this team next year is probably you play, probably closer to the style that you saw during that 8-game winning streak to end of the year, and that's obviously part of the pitch here to Giannis. Giannis is not without ego, right? Like Giannis does not want to go ring chase and be like the second banana to some other guy who's like roughly in his orbit, or who like culturally would be, kind of the more beloved guy wherever this is, right? Like I think Giannis Giannis knows what happened with KD, right? I don't think he wants to go and be somebody's wingman, even if he's nominally the better player. So I think the pitch is like a few things, right? It's we're going to bring back these like young shooters, energetic guys that you sparked with at the end of the year that are going to be able to kind of play and fit around you. We're going to put the ball in your hands. You're going to go out and average 33, 13, and 9 assists a game. And, we're going to be Giannis in a cloud of dust on offense. And we're going to try to play faster, more frenetic. Dame, obviously, a guy that likes to play more under control, more half court. We're not going to do that because we can't. So if we're going to be a good offense, we're going to try to play faster and all the kind of new coach, sort of buzzwords that people always say. But I think you kind of have to do that. And I think defensively, they're going to have to probably try to be a team that tries to, force more turnovers and play differently than they obviously have for these last few years. So I think that's sort of the pitch. And again, but like, are you going to be a 48, 49 win team doing that? I mean, maybe there's some version of the world where, other teams have injuries and, like stuff kind of breaks your way or whatever it might be. But I don't think that's really a realistic kind of goal to have next year. I think probably, you're a low 40s win team. Like you try to win 42 to 44 games. You avoid the play-in, hopefully, and you get into like, the 6th seed, maybe the 5th seed. That's probably your best case scenario. And then you're just in a position where you hope that you've built just a more flexible, pliable roster that can play different ways. And you don't get stuck doing what you did this year, which was obviously kind of adjusting too late. Although I have to double check, but like even the like lineup that everybody loved, the lineup that was closing games, did they even have a positive differential in that series, Justin? I don't know if you guys looked it up recently. Like it was like barely. It didn't. That lineup did not like work that well.
It's just that
It wasn't like the starting.
Yeah,
it wasn't like the starting 5 the year prior.
Yeah. So so it's a sort of one of those things. So I think that's honestly like I think you're selling Giannis on that. By the way, guys, you're bringing Thanasis back.
Absolutely.
Newsflash. Like, I'm not saying we should like want Thanasis taking up a roster spot, but Chris Livingston, sorry, bud. You're guaranteed 2 years of guaranteed contracts. I hope you had fun. Good luck to you, my friend. Thanasis, bring the podcast into the locker room. Like, we're doing this. And again, is that like appeasing Giannis and, selling out whatever? Yeah, that's what you're doing. And maybe that's not enough for Giannis either, right? But I think you're appealing to, like his loyalty. And also, I mean, if you're at Thanasis, by the way, if you're at Thanasis, like, I mean, you should want to stay in Milwaukee, right? Like, people love you in Milwaukee. You got your podcast. You can go to Potawatomi, bring a bunch of people in. Like, you can get your roster spot. Nobody's going to be that mad about it either, because like you and Giannis won a championship here. Blah blah blah. Like, this is the Antetokounmpo family. Like, like, this is your city. Replicating that elsewhere, sure, I'm sure you can get a roster spot for another team, but you're probably not going to win a championship there. And then people are going to be complaining about Giannis, getting his brother a spot, blah, blah, blah. So I think the Antetokounmpo family has ample reason. I know that obviously Giannis wants to win more championships, but I do think there's actually a pretty good, like, kind of loyalty case for those guys. And, Giannis kind of having it be really his team, I think is something that I do think appeals to him. And, as we saw, like, he had a lot of fun with the ball in his hands. And I mean, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case if he goes to another team that may be a little better situated to compete. But also, as I think we've talked about offline a lot, I don't think so many of the teams that could make a play for him. Again, like, there's not really like a trade that the Bucks would want to make with them, or there's not really like how did Brooklyn always come up in discussions for Giannis, like, during the season? It's like, what are the Nets going to trade? And then what the hell do they even have to, like, play with him? Like, it's like so strange to me that was even like a big kind of discussion. Like, talk about not wanting to be KD. Like, really? You don't even have Kyrie to go play with in Brooklyn, like your version of Kyrie to go play with in Brooklyn. So I think, I don't know, in my head, I've been thinking it's like 60-40 Giannis stays. But I have no idea, right? Like, it's very possible that maybe there is, more of an appetite to leave and see what else is out there. But I certainly don't think it's like a foregone conclusion. I don't think anything's a foregone conclusion. And honestly, we won't know probably until obviously Giannis has his conversation with John Horst and ownership. And I think the other big variable, which people are probably saying, what about this, Frank, is Doc Rivers. And I don't necessarily read a ton into Doc Rivers, like, not having any, like, decision made. I also, like, Giannis's comments about Doc were, like, basically like, he's a really nice person, which, to me didn't necessarily tell me that, like, Giannis is going to pound the table and demand that Doc stay. So I don't know. I mean, like, I'm sure they don't want to. I think he has 2 years, whatever it is, 20 million, something like that left. I'm sure they would rather not have to eat another coach's salary. But I think if Giannis goes in and says, like, hey, I don't, like, look at what happened. Like, I don't think he can get us there. Like, we're wasting our time. I'm sure obviously there'd be a lot of consideration to going a different route on coach as well. So, which, again, like, I mean, if you're just kind of killing time, like, sure, Doc can do that. But obviously, like, if you need someone to kind of pull a rabbit out of a hat, I don't think Doc's the guy to do that either.
A lot to unpack there, especially the last piece.
Told you, that's why I let you get that ad read in, Justin.
I had another question too, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let.
I got like 3 weeks. I got like 3 weeks of podcasts, like, all stored up in my head right now. I got a spreadsheet. I got a spreadsheet too. We haven't even gotten to the spreadsheet.
Yeah. So the Giannis destinations piece, the percentage that you put out there, it's funny. I was talking with a few other people at our end of season get together, and we were pretty close to that number, seemed to be the consensus. But just the coaching piece, because that's what's seemingly come up the most with Bucks fans. So I do want to get into that conversation. We'll do so coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. Well, this next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. If you've ever checked your bank account and wondered where all your money went between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of those finances. That's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just doing your managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA. Use that code today to get half off your first year. Everyone in my house always has something going on. You call this the busy season. You don't have a lot of time to go grocery shopping or to cook healthy meals at home. That's why you need to use Hungryroot. Hungryroot is like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist rolled into one. They take care of grocery shopping and meal planning. They offer personalized recommendations based on your tastes and your health goals. You'll love how Hungryroot tailors your orders based on what you liked or didn't like. It gets smarter every single time. They have high quality, nutritious food. You can stick to your gut friendly, high protein diet without spending hours of planning. And best of all, the meals come together in 15 minutes or less, giving you more time for workouts, family time, hobbies, anything going on in the summer. Take advantage of this exclusive deal. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That is hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA for 40% off and a lifetime free item. Okay, so just to circle back quickly, and I want to hear your thoughts on that, Camille. Yeah, I was always struck by that too, of like, why does Brooklyn keep coming up with the assets that they have and what they would give to the Bucks? Number one, and people will push back and say, well, look at the cap space that Brooklyn has. Okay, who are the free agents this summer? Like, who are you going to round out your roster with? It's not like, to your point, well, we're going to sign Katie and Kyrie the same summer here. So I never understood that one. It gets even more complicated with everything else when we talk about the Bucks draft assets. And I talked about this once before too, Frank, but I don't know. It's just, it feels like if there is a Giannis trade, it would almost have to be a 3-team deal where you include the New Orleans Pelicans and get your picks back, because in a way it just feels like what you would get. I suppose the Oklahoma City Thunder are the one team that has that war chest. And that's why today, by the way, was interesting, because if the Thunder lose that game and go down 3-1 and eventually lose that series to the Denver Nuggets and lose in the second round 2 years in a row, then maybe we see Sam Presti say, hey, this model, I got to reevaluate this. And maybe it does mean I got to go out and get Giannis. But in those scenarios, we keep hearing, well, it would be an offer unlike anything we've seen. I mean, I don't know. Look at some of the trades we've seen. For every Mikal Bridges trade you can point to, there's others of like, that's it. And if it just is, you get your pick swaps and your picks back and maybe one other asset and some young players, like, yeah, so I got my stuff back that I gave away for you. Like, okay, I don't really know if that's the package I'm enthralled with. I am right now at like 65-35 in terms of Giannis still being here. And I think the big thing to me is just another thing you touched on of like, we can point to Oklahoma City. I don't think that's going to happen. You can point to Houston and everything else, but like, what is the slam dunk scenario that's out there where you're the guy, this is a great team around you? Because even Houston, assets they would give up, I mean, there's already spacing issues as it is with the Houston Rockets, and then you're dumping Giannis into there. That I don't know that there's that, this team has the assets that can give you everything, and it makes perfect sense for Giannis too. What are your thoughts on that, Camille?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Like, I've had questions around where Giannis would go as well. And recently hearing Bobby Portis on, was it Run It Up, the podcast that he does over on FanDuel? Yeah. And, he's getting asked about Giannis. Of course, he's getting asked about Giannis, and he's saying, like, Giannis bleeds green. He personally thinks that Giannis stays, but we'll see how that unfolds. And, of course, Giannis had to make the comment back himself.
I'm stunned, Camille. I can't believe Bobby Portis wouldn't come and say, no, I think he's gone.
Right. Bobby, honestly, in his comments made me think that the chances of him leaving are a bit greater than I thought before based on what that said. But, him and Giannis making jokes that Giannis saying, worry about yourself. Don't worry about me. Are you staying? You leaving? What are you doing, Bobby? And Bobby, they're laughing about it. But I think I'm probably like 70-30 on that split of Giannis staying at the 70 and going at that 30%, where I can see the Bucks trying to sell Giannis, as we said, like this year might be a little step back, but it's the first step in the redirect of how we're going to build this next era of Bucks basketball around you, which is a question I have for Frank, which might have to wait for another episode, just around the cap situation with the Bucks and how next summer actually could look for this team and what they'd be able to do there. But when even looking at this season with Giannis and everything, I love that you brought the Doc Rivers point, because that's the question I wanted to ask. I didn't want to put Justin in the bind with his relationship to the team. So I wanted to wait until Frank was here as well to kind of bounce the ideas. But you mentioned we haven't heard any news around Doc Rivers at this point. It's almost the middle of May. If he's staying or if he's going. But the question that I do have is, do you think the Bucks can win with Doc Rivers as their coach based on what we've seen over the last year and a half of the Doc Rivers experience? And I'll let Frank take that to start. And Justin, you can kind
to
of
be clear, do you mean the 48 games that they won in the regular season?
I was literally going to say, like, define win. What does winning mean in this scenario?
Well, let's start the bar low. Get out the first round. Can the Bucks advance in the playoffs with Doc Rivers as their coach? Because as we know too, when you get to the playoffs, the coaching adjustments, the way you coach has to be a little bit, I don't sound a shorter leash, but you have to make decisions
not
quickly.
bad is what you're trying to say.
And you can't overreact to. It's like finding the happy medium. Can Doc Rivers do that in a way that can be conducive to this team winning in the playoffs?
I mean, I would say probably not. I think the problem for the Bucks is that, like, you know, you're not going to, like, putting in a quote unquote league average head coach, because I think that's pretty much what Doc is. I think he's at this point probably an average coach. I think he's, better at sort of locker room personality management, keeping guys kind of, in the right place rather than, finding like new ways to play and kind of reinventing what a team is, or, kind of being able to help them like dramatically overachieve. Right. But I think, it's the question that, always comes up, and has come up, basically each of the last few years, is, so, what kind of coach, can you find a coach that can actually elevate you? And, does the option behind door number two, what level of certainty do you need to go that route? And, I think at this point, if a lot of Jimmy Haslam, I think, is understandably taken a lot of grief because him arriving has coincided with the Bucks obviously not doing anything positive in the playoffs. But it's like, you look at it, I think the things that ironically, the thing that has been probably most notably traced to quote unquote ownership. I think there's a couple things we've heard sort of, like very clearly indicated, from people I've talked to, is coaching, right? Like Doc over Kenny Atkinson. When Doc was hired, supposedly Horst may have wanted Kenny Atkinson. Supposedly that may have also been the preference, before. I don't know, right? I have a hard time assuming that, the Adrian Griffin hire was, like, I don't think that was Jimmy Haslam. Like, yeah, exactly. But at least the Doc hiring seemed to have been, kind of pushed more by ownership. And on some level, it's like, I think we said, like, in that scenario, I think I kind of get it. But Camille, as you've always framed it, like, nobody, if you had rewound to the prior summer, would have wanted to come away from that process with Doc Rivers. Is why he wasn't even really in the process. So I think there's the coaching kind of piece of it. And then I think there's also, ownership. We've heard basically just didn't really want to be paying Chris Middleton to not play that many games anymore. And so here you go. Here's Kyle Kuzma. Enjoy Kyle Kuzma being available for all of the first round playoffs and pretty much all the games after he came in and trade. How'd you like it? So I think the interesting part is, I think Jimmy Haslam, honestly, like, given how impatient he's shown himself to be, / how willing he is to pay. And we don't know the full dynamics of, exactly how it works behind closed doors as far as the ownership group goes. But I don't imagine Jimmy Haslam's the one saying, like, boy, I don't want to, I'd rather have another mediocre season than take a chance on a new head coach that maybe could help us get out of the first round, right? I'm guessing Jimmy Haslam would probably sign up for it. Now, is Jimmy Haslam himself going to lead you to a good choice on a coach? I'm not going to like put my money behind that either. But I think honestly, like, probably a lot of this, the coaching decision, is going to come down to the specifics of who they might be able to get if they were to go a different direction from Doc. Like, I don't think they're going to be like, well, I don't know who we'd pick, but like, we just need somebody else, right? I think it would probably be a process that would be dictated by, hey, we really like Michael Malone, or we really like, I don't even know who
Taylor
else is out
Jenkins.
there. Taylor Jenkins, right? Like, we have some view that like, hey, we think this guy we could get to come here, and we think that he would give us a potentially fresh voice and fresh opportunity to get more out of this team. We can call that naive. But at this point, like, you're kind of, I think, gambling on trying something, right? I think that's really where the Bucks are, is like, you're not changing the coach because that you've got a slam dunk upgrade. You're changing it because like you're just playing for the variance, right? Playing for upside of, well, we saw what Doc sort of did over the past year and a half. And, to Doc's credit, like, he played a lot of young guys.
Yep.
You might not have liked his rotation, taking too long to switch the starting five in the first round. But, guys like Ryan Rollins and KPJ and AJ Green and, Ajax for a while at least, right? Like, I mean, we got really extended looks, and those guys blossomed into, a number of those guys obviously blossomed into rotation players, which, certainly would not have been like your assumption based on all the old Doc Rivers stereotypes. So I think, yeah, I mean, at this point, like, it's sort of the lottery ticket thing. Like, if you want to have a chance at a second round, I think you probably like would roll your dice on some other guy other than Doc Rivers. But by the same token, like, is that any guarantee? I don't think so either.
I think we're just scratching the surface on the coaching thing, and what you brought up too, Frank, about what Giannis has to say about it. I mean, that's the only way I see any type of change there, especially for where this team may be transitioning. The question of taking a step back and what that actually means for a team that's lost in the first round 3 straight years as well. So we're going to carry this over into a part 2. We'll get into that part of the conversation coming up on tomorrow's show. So we'll wrap it here and pick things up where we left off on tomorrow's show with Frank and Camille on Locked On Bucks.